Hey, this is Jon Gordon with Positive You, and today my guest is Jamie Kern Lima. Jamie, how you doing?
So great and so grateful and so excited to be here with you. It's a big, big day.
It is a big day. Your book just released. Believe it, incredible book. I had the chance to read it before it came out, and I have to say it was one of the greatest books, most authentic, compelling, powerful stories I've ever read. Your journey, your story is iconic. It's legendary. It's amazing. And I want people to understand your story, to get to know you and your story. But I want to start with first your big success so they know who I'm talking to. And you are the founder of It Cosmetics. You sold it to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion. And now you are this incredible author coming out with a new book. Can you take us back, though, to the beginning when you were young? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, by the way. Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, this is quite a journey and quite a journey of going from like struggling Denny's waitress to billion-dollar entrepreneur, right? It's been quite a journey. And so, I mean, all growing up, Jon, I used to watch Oprah on television and I just loved other people's stories. I thought I was going to be a talk show host my whole life. Eventually became a news anchor and thought that was the path I was on. And I just like so many people out there, all of a sudden you feel something on your heart, right? Like either a setback happens or a problem happens to you, whatever it is, or you just have a really great idea, or you just kind of feel this calling on your heart. And I was, working as a television news anchor and started getting a skin condition called rosacea. And there's no cure for it. And I'd be anchoring the live news and I would be hearing from the producer in my earpiece live on television, like, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. Wipe it off, wipe it off. And I knew I couldn't. And it became a real issue in the sense of like, oh, like my cheeks would get so red and they'd be sandpaper-like texture, bumps everywhere. And I kind of went through this season of like, oh my gosh, am I going to lose viewers? Am I going to lose my job? What am I? And so I started this, for me, it felt like this major setback, right? And then you know how it is sometimes, like our setbacks are so often like our setups, right? For what we're called to do next. And sometimes we just don't know it at the time. And that's exactly what happened. I initially just started trying to spend my whole paycheck, which wasn't very much in television news, on every product I could get my hands on. So like the most expensive ones in the department stores, the most inexpensive in the drugstores, the pro makeup artist stuff. And I ended up realizing, oh my gosh, there's nothing that works for me. And then on top of it all, I had this huge like aha moment when I was just trying to figure out why is it nothing works for me. I realized, Jon, something that became this whole why behind the why, this mission for me to start this business. And I realized like, oh, wow, like all the ads I've seen my whole life in magazines or on commercials, like I've never seen anyone that has a skin problem selling a makeup, right? It's like all these overly photoshopped, unrealistic images. And I realized, oh, my whole life growing up, I aspired to look like that. But then I also realized deep down inside, they made me feel like I wasn't enough. And I had this big aha moment kind of all at once where I realized, wow, if I can, quit my job as a news anchor, which is scary. That was my life's dream. But sometimes knowing when to let go of a dream is as important as knowing when to go after a new one, right? And for me, I pray, I get still, and I really try to listen to that knowing, that gut feeling. And it kept telling me, you're supposed to jump, you're supposed to take this risk. I didn't know anything about makeup or beauty. And I just but it became a deeper mission. It was like, oh, if I can not just create a product somehow, right, that actually works for people like me, it's going to help so many other people that have probably just given up also on makeup. But on top of it, like, let me do something that matters. Let me like create a beauty company that uses real women, all ages, shapes, sizes, skin tones as my models and call them beautiful and mean it. Let me try to shift culture in the beauty industry around inclusivity for like every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself and every grown woman who still does. And that mission is what fueled me. And I would later learn, by the way, after years and years and years of rejection and no's and not paying myself. This is the thing, by the way, sorry, I'm going to get so excited sharing this with you, but like when you read the Wall Street Journal or the articles out there, they're very, they're press. And so they talk about, oh, girl goes from Denny's waitress to $1 billion entrepreneur, or they just tell you the headlines. They don't tell you what really happened, like the story behind the story, which is a big part of why I wrote this book, because there was so much rejection, so much opposition. And so many times in life, for every person listening in your community right now, it's like we face these setbacks and sometimes we feel like we're alone in them, or like it's us, or maybe we're not qualified, or all the experts are saying no, and success isn't happening around us the way we want it to happen. And so this book is really all of those stories too. And how, and like, what did I do in the face of all the opposition to not give up and to keep going and to break through all the self-doubt. So it's really a whole book about a girl who went from not trusting herself to trusting herself, and not believing in herself to believing in herself, doubting she's enough to knowing she's enough. But I also know it's the story of so many people out there right now, especially right now in this year of uncertainty, and all the things that they need to do to really learn to trust and believe and know they're enough, and step into all of who they are and all of who they're called to be. So anyhow, long story short, I'm so excited. It's such a big week, right? The book is coming out and it's been like 2 years in the making. But long story short is that, on my honeymoon flight to South Africa with my husband, Paulo, we wrote this is not romantic, by the way. This would not make it into your relationship grit book. Not romantic. But on the honeymoon flight, we wrote the business plan to It Cosmetics. We got back and both quit our jobs and literally went all in. I thought, and maybe so many of your listeners in your community watching or listening will connect with this, but I thought like, oh, if you just have a great product, right, that works, or a great idea, or a great service, or a great blog or podcaster, but like, it's just going to sell. Like people, like, it's just going to sell. And so we both got back, quit our jobs, went all in and used all of our savings, which wasn't very much, to try and figure out how do we create a product that works, hire an advisory board, that kind of thing. I didn't know, Jon, that like when we did that, it would be 3 years before we could afford to pay ourselves. Two funny things that maybe I just want everyone out there that is in this season of stepping into all of who they're born to be and called to be, like they feel it on their heart, but they're like, wait, maybe I'm wrong because stuff isn't going my way all around me. Like it did not go our way for 3 years. And when you Google our story, you see, oh, they sold for $1.2 billion cash. Oh, all these things. And yes, that happened, but it happened in big part because we made the decision to keep checking in with our gut and saying, is this where I'm supposed to be? And we made the decision to not quit. And we made the decision to believe that we could. And those 3 things are free to do for anybody. They're hard to do, and it's a journey, right? And so that's why in my new book, I talk about like all the stuff I did wrong, and then also all the stuff I did right. But Jon, in our living room in those early years, it was 3 years of hearing no from every single retailer, no after no after no after no, even QVC, which I knew, oh my gosh, if we could get on QVC, I could really show real women live and show and prove how the product works. And they said no for years. And my husband, Paulo, we couldn't afford to hire anybody. So my husband, Paulo, bought that HTML for Dummies book, and he designed our whole first website. And I thought, okay, all the stores are saying no. So we're going to launch our own website and it's just going to sell. Like this is going to be our saving grace. And when our first website launched, I thought like, it's going to be Christmas. Like I'm a kid on Christmas morning. And I was so excited, and literally no orders. And day 2, no orders. And day 3, no orders. Weeks into no orders, I finally said to him, anything a spouse would say. I said, you did it wrong. It's broken. Like you didn't do it right. And then several days later, we got our very first order that came in, and I was like running around screaming. And my husband loves soccer. He's from Brazil. And so whenever Brazil scores a soccer goal, like he screams so loud and runs around the house, and our dogs hide under the bed. And so that was me when we got our very first order. I'm like, we got our first order. And he stops me and he says to me, that was me. I placed the order to prove to you our website's not broken. And I was just like, oh, it was just scrappy like that, trying to just figure it out for a long time.
I love this story so much because we do see the highlights. We do see the success. We see the big sale, but there's so much that went into this, so much heartache, so much rejection, so much adversity. This is Positive University, and it's all about overcoming. And your book is titled Believe It. So how did you and Paulo believe it, even when you maybe shouldn't have believed it? How did you keep each other positive on this journey of rejection and a ton of no's?
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things to do. And I think that when I look back, like there was a lot of mistakes I made, a lot of times where I put experts' opinion on a pedestal instead of my own faith and my own inner knowing, right? Which is so tempting to do. And so, one story I think that really captures because I think so many of us connect through the power of story, right? And captures like some of the things we did that helped us believe, helped us stay positive, helped us keep going. And they came out of some of the toughest moments. So we were a couple years into the business. It was so hard. We were down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was not just our company bank account, it was our personal bank account. So anyone out there, whoever has been in that spot and you go to an ATM to get cash and you hit no receipt because you don't want to see it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what you can't, like that's where we were at. And dollar hot dogs from Costco on the counter outside. Anybody who goes and eats it. The good thing is those taste good. But it was like, how do we conserve every penny we have? It was like a season like that. And we finally got a big call from an investor at a private equity firm. And Jon, I was so excited because this particular private equity company, they've invested in tons of like consumer product companies, like products all of us right now buy at the grocery stores. A lot of them, they've taken this particular PE place has invested in some of them pre-revenue, some of them when they're really small, and built them to these huge household names. So I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, they see how how good our product is, what we're doing. Like if they invest in us, like A, maybe we're not going to go bankrupt. B, maybe they'll have leverage and help get us in all these stores that are telling us no and get us on QVC is telling us no. So I was so excited, and we started taking meetings, and they seemed super interested. We got to the final meeting after the diligence phase, which is when you show them your projections and your plans and all that. I'll never forget this moment. And it was a defining moment that helped me understand how do you stay positive in the face of adversity and opposition and hard times and setbacks. We got to the final meeting, okay? And I was like, it's going to happen. Paulo and I flew in for the meeting, and they were so kind. Everyone was great. And then the head guy, and he was standing about 3 feet from me, and he says to me, so, we just want to tell you, we appreciate you. We're rooting for you, all these things, but it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And by this point, I'm so used to hearing no, right? And I'm like, okay, can you tell me why? Like, could you give me any input or feed? Because usually feedback's a gift, right? And he goes, well, do you want me to be honest with you? Like really honest with you? And I'm like, yes, please. And he was literally 3 feet from me. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you, with your body and your weight. And I remember watching, it was almost like I was watching his mouth move in slow motion. And when these words were coming out, I felt like this lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt, like flood my body all at once. And I remember as I was watching him say these words, I wasn't offended or anything like that. I mean, it wasn't even about him. It was almost like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye. And I remember this moment where two things happened. Like I remember feeling like, okay, I need to keep my faith bigger than my fears right now. But I also had this deep feeling as he was talking where I just felt he's wrong. He's wrong. But I also felt like if I was ever going to prove that, it would come down to me truly learning how to believe it for myself. And the other thing that happened, and I truly believe our setbacks, even when they suck, even when they hurt, even when they don't make sense, even when they're unfair, our setbacks are so often our setups, right? For fuel of what we're supposed to step into. And when he said those words, I thanked him for his time, because what I realized in that moment was like, oh, he has seen the same images his whole life of what beauty is that I have too, right? Him passing on investing in us because of my weight, that is exactly why I need to create this, build this company, shift culture and beauty, because it doesn't just affect women, it affects everybody. And he's a dad to little, right? And it's like, it affects everyone. And I never took his no personally. It fueled me. And by the way, just a fun side note is 8 years later, when we sold to L'Oreal and their largest U.S. acquisition in history, I got an email from him, and he said, "Congratulations, I was wrong." And I also learned we would have been the biggest investment in his the most successful investment in his company's history. And the last thing I'll share is, on this is that, when I talk about our setbacks or our setups, had he said yes to us at that time, we were so desperate. We were so small. We had what looked like no opportunities around us. We probably would have sold the majority of our business to him for almost no money just to survive. Instead, we ended up because everyone rejected us in big part, we ended up staying the largest shareholder all the way through the sale. And our life is and what we're able to do and how we're able to serve and give is so fundamentally different because of so many of those no's, even though at the time they hurt, they're painful. And it's I really think those, so often the most painful times in our life and the rejections and the no's are often just serendipitous grace, wrapped in a package labeled painful, rejection. And so, part of staying positive was really keeping the perspective the whole time of, first of all, learning to really tune in and trust ourselves and our gut, because so many people, even in your community, people I know, myself, this is always a journey and a struggle, is to figure out how to trust ourselves, right? And how to actually, because we're surrounded by so much noise, right? We have all the self-doubt in our own head. We have other people's opinions all around us, everywhere. We hop on social media or the news and everyone's fighting. There's so much noise that so many people go through life and never learn how to actually break through and turn down the volume on all that stuff, turn down the volume in our own heads of our own self-doubt, and actually get still and listen to what it is our gut is telling us, our knowing, our truth, right? And for a lot of people, that's how they hear God. For a lot of people, that's how they hear their faith. And I think that doing that is so important. And in the book, I talk about so many tips and lessons on how I've done it. But I feel like if people are going to do one thing, just really learning to tune in to and listen to their own gut. A lot of people have never done it. A lot of people haven't done it in a long time. A lot of people feel like they don't know how to do it. And part of not knowing how is just because we're not separating that, oh, wait, everything I'm hearing isn't me. I'm hearing my own self-doubt. I'm hearing other people's opinions. I'm hearing my friends and family who love me, but they only see me through their own lens of experience and limitations, right? We have to learn to turn down the volume on all that, get still, listen to our gut, because at the end of the day, it's the single biggest way we're going to step into all of who we are, all of who we're called to be. And I know you have a lot of athletes on and a lot of people, and competition's a big, and listen, I'm all for competing, all that stuff. Like, oh, trust me, like I'm driven. Like, it's not an accident. We built $1 billion business. But here's what I know to be true for anybody listening, whether their dream is to start painting again or to write a book and just write that first page, whatever it is. And I think this is so important, by the way, because now we're seeing social media everywhere and it's so easy to fall in that comparison trap. When it comes to competition, the biggest thing that I know is true. And I think when we focus on this is another way to stay really, really positive also. And it's true, is that we're not here to compete with anyone else. Like, we're here to compete with like who God made us born to be. Like, we're here to compete with who we know deep down inside we're capable of becoming. And when people really look at it that way, they're like, oh, that's when you know, oh, I'm not in the right job, or, oh, I need to start taking that dance class, or, oh, I need to, all those things we know deep down inside, if we're on that track of stepping into all that we are and all that we're created to be.
It's so good, Jamie. I often say that man's rejection is God's protection. So you're definitely being protected during that time, no doubt. And then also just hearing you talk about your belief, your faith, your intuition. I'm just curious. I'm thinking about you as a Denny's waitress.
Yeah.
What did you believe was possible then? And did you learn to trust your gut then? Like, when did you start learning to trust your intuition, to hear those voices? Because I get impulses too. I get hits of what I'm supposed to do. And I think some people don't get them. So you share a lot of tips in the book, by the way. So we're not gonna be able to share everything on this interview. Read the book. Jamie shares a ton of tips in this book to help you on your journey. If you're a small business, her advice is incredible. If you're growing your business, if you're a big business, if you're a leader, if you're someone who's an entrepreneur, if you're someone who wants to be more creative, all of the chapters in that book give you nuggets of wisdom and advice and tips to help you on your journey. It's like really is for everyone, just so you know. So you're going to get some tips, but Jamie, in terms of that intuition and gut, tell us about that Denny's waitress that you were and what was possible then to you.
Yeah. So I've always felt, and I've always felt deep down inside like I was destined to serve in a big way or do something that impacted other people on all of our own journey. I always had that inkling, didn't know what it was. And working as a Denny's waitress, this is so funny. Working as a Denny's waitress, oh my gosh. So the Denny, and I was working to try and save up for school and all that, and pay my way through school. And Denny's, it's so funny how so many things teach us lessons, right? So I won't get into this too much, but like the Denny's I worked at, the kitchen was a mess in the sense that they would take an hour to get pancakes out sometimes. So I'm an introvert by nature. And I was like, oh my gosh, people are getting mad and they're leaving because it's taking an hour to get pancakes. And I'm not getting a tip. And I really need a tip because I'm trying to pay for through school. And so I learned to talk to people and try to be like, and try to just connect with them and ask about their stories and that whole thing. And it probably planted a seed in me of understanding the importance of operations of a business and the right operational infrastructure. So even as a, in that whole different industry as a Denny's waitress, I really think every single thing we go through in life helps us build that foundation, right, of where we're going to be. But, in the time I was a Denny's waitress, here's really where my gut started speaking to me. And this is for everybody out there. It's never too late to start learning how to hear your own intuition, right? Most people never do. But just like faith or like anything else, I think it's never too late. I think everyone can start now. And I really think that it's a journey. It's a journey of building on experiences and then looking back and going, oh, I didn't listen to my gut there. I had that instinct and it didn't go so well. Or, oh, I decided to go against everyone else. I trusted my gut and here's what happened, right? And I think for all of us, it's every area of life. I mean, this is something a lot of your community might relate to, is like, or not, but if you've ever dated a sketchy guy or you have a friend where you're just like, I don't think they're telling me the truth. Something's not adding up. We kind of know it, right? Like so many people can hopefully relate to this at some point in their life, but they've dated someone where they're like, I don't really believe him that his phone just broke and that he just like disappeared for a day, right? I don't think and you can choose, we all choose like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it and I'm just going to stay in love. Or, you know what? Like, okay, I'm done. Like we all know. And I feel like we continue building those experiences in life. And then we look back on them and it's like, now I'm able, looking back on so much of this journey, I'm able to really know that some of my biggest mistakes and misjudgments and miscalculations came when I went against that inkling inside, right? And I trusted people that are touted visionaries or experts. And it's good to trust experts and visionaries, except if your deep gut inkling goes against it, because knowing that you stayed to that through line of authenticity for you and what you're called to do is so important. And learning how to tune in and hear that can literally change the whole course of your life. And one big example of that is probably one of the greatest business lessons I've ever learned and life lessons. And it came down to this moment where after 3 years of hearing no's, and by the way, Jon, at one point, I think it was 2 years into our business, I actually was able to and just to share a scrappy tip for anyone out there, like really building their business who can't afford to hire people, I was like emailing everyone on LinkedIn. I would find anyone that worked at the company. I would just try to get in some way, send them products, ask them to, and I'd finally like hustled my way into a guy named Alan Burke, who was the head of Olive Beauty at QVC. He had built this multi-billion dollar beauty industry there, department there. And I got through to his assistant and I begged her to like have him look at our product and get us meetings and all those things in front of the buyers. And anyways, long story short, I got a call saying he is going to take a call with me and he's reviewed the products. And I thought, oh my gosh, this head of everything, Alan Burke, if he's going to spend his precious time like calling me, it's going to be good. Right. And I was so excited. And I was pacing around waiting for the call in our office, which was our living room. And Paula was there and I was like, I was freaking out. He called. And right when I answered the phone, obviously I was like, I didn't know what we were going to do, right? We were down to no money. I was freaking out. And I said, okay, to my head, I'm like, they're lucky to have us. He's lucky to get us, like all these things, right? Pumping myself up. And I got on the phone and he said, hello, Jamie, this is Alan Burke from QVC. And I'm like, Alan, it's so great to talk to you and this whole thing. And anyways, he got right to the point and he said, we've reviewed your products with all the buyers here in the beauty department. And it's unanimous that it's a no. We're going to pass on your company. You're not the right fit for QVC and you're not the right fit for our customers, but we wish you well. And I was like, oh, but I am the right fit. And I just tried to pour into another pitch. And he thanked me for loving QVC, but said it's a no, got off the phone. Okay. So then I cried myself to sleep 3 nights in a row. If you've ever had bad news and you like wake up in the morning and you hope it was a dream and you're like, oh, it wasn't, right? It was like that day after day after day. So fast forward another year, we're at a big beauty show and one of the QVC hosts tried our product. There were 6,000 women there. She tried our product and said, you need to be on QVC. She told the buyer, we got one shot. We got our first big yes, but what it meant, and this is one of the greatest life lessons and business lessons I've ever learned as it pertains to trusting your gut and staying authentic to who you are. We got one shot on QVC. And here's what it meant. We got a 10-minute window to go live in front of 100 million homes and sell our product. But what it also meant was, and at the time we were selling only 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, right? Fulfilling them out of our living room, driving to the post office. So we're only selling 2 to 3 orders a day, barely staying alive. They ordered over 6,000 units of our concealer to sell in just a 10-minute window in order to hit their sales goal or not come back. And it was a consignment deal, which meant we weren't paid for any of it. And whatever sold, we got paid for, but whatever didn't sell would get shipped back to us. So it's like never, as an entrepreneur, never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But at this point, we were like, out of options. And it just felt like, you know what, let's just go all in. So we said yes. We applied for SBA loans, and I think the first 22 banks said no. Bank number 23 gave us an SBA loan to cover just the manufacturing costs of those 6,000 units. And so literally everything was on the line. I flew out to QVC a week early. And you know how a lot of times athletes will envision themselves on the podium or landing the triple axel or scoring the touchdown. Like you visualize stuff. I flew out there a week early and I sat in this rental car in the parking lot of QVC, which is in Pennsylvania. And I just started envisioning everything. Like I was trying to pretend I was an athlete. And I was like visualizing everything I could, like the sold out sign coming up across the screen. And here's the moment that became hard. We hired third-party consultants that are amazing at helping people succeed selling on television. And they all told me the same thing. They said, if you're going to have any shot at success, you need to use this type of model, which was the same type of model I'd seen in magazines my whole life. You need to do your sell this way. And I would argue with them. I'd say, okay, but that's not why I created the product. And also, like, what if I just take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea on national TV so I can prove live the product works? And I would say oh my gosh, if I'm sitting at home and I am 70 years old, or I have hyperpigmentation or this skin challenge or this skin tone or this skin problem, if I don't see someone that looks like me, how do I know it's going to work for me? And we would argue, and they wanted us to win. They wanted the best for us. And listen, this is the best advice we can give you. Here's what you need to do. And one thing I'll say is, had I realized that if you're ever going to do anything novel or new, or even it's an idea that's been done a million times, but it's your take on it, of course, experts aren't going to think it's going to work, because subconsciously they only think things are going to work that they've already seen proven work, right? And I didn't know that for a long time, and they mean so well, but they're seeing it. Even though a lot of them are visionaries, they're only able to see what you're doing through their own lens of experience. And so anyways, long story short, I didn't have a chance to do it both ways. It was everything was on the line. And it's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to stick with authenticity in my mission. But then when you're in a moment where everything's on the line and you might lose your entire company, it's really hard to just tune in and trust your gut, right? Put your own gut instinct on a pedestal instead of the expert's advice. And I sat in that car for a week and I stared at the front door of the QVC building. And I knew the next time I walked through those doors, I would either walk out bankrupt or with my whole life changed. And the more I prayed about it, I would sit there in that car, literally crying, trying to God, take this from me, because it feels so heavy, and just tell me what to do. And it came down to a couple of things. I imagined who my customer was, and I would just kind of imagine who she is watching at home. And for some reason, I kept imagining a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was too busy to remember she mattered and remember she's beautiful and that she's enough. And I just remember this moment where I was like, you know what? I would rather, if she's going to bless me with 5 seconds of her precious time, I would rather have her look up on her TV screen and see me showing real women who look like her, calling them beautiful and meaning it. Even if she buys nothing, I'd rather that happen than me sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so it was I knew what I had to do, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right? And when the 10-minute clock started, we went live on the air. And by the way, Jon, when you probably know this, I didn't know this until I got there. When the 10-minute clock starts, you don't just get 10 minutes for sure. If you're a minute or two in and you're not selling enough, your clock cuts and it jumps down to 2 minutes. And you just lost 6 minutes. And it's the most stressful thing and most high pressure thing, right? Because they don't mess around. You hit sales goals or that's it, which is any business. But so the 10-minute clock goes up. It's 9:59, 9:58.
Jamie, I got to stop you there for a second.
Yeah,
I want people to realize this, your future depends on this moment. I'm thinking about this. I mean, you and Paulo, everything you've worked towards, you are now going on national television in front of 10 million homes. The light comes on. It's you, a camera, and the viewer. Yeah. I can't imagine how nervous, how fearful, and what that moment must have felt like. You talked about sports, being an athlete, the bright lights are on. It's a big game. And your future career depends on how you play in this moment. And there you were in that moment. How did you feel first off? Like, what did you feel like? Was an outer body experience? And then tell us what happened.
Yeah, I felt, so I'm never nervous for TV, right? Because that's what I did my career. But in this moment, exactly what you said, I was literally shaking like a leaf, like when Scooby-Doo would see a ghost in cartoons. Like I was like shaking so much. I had this whole demonstration planned on my wrist that shows how our concealer doesn't crease. And I tried to do it. And my hand was shaking so much. The host grabbed my hand, shoved it under the podium on live TV. And I literally, I remember in that moment, the way I was able to get through it was I had to make it about something bigger than myself, because every second, every moment I would start to go back into my own head, I'd be like, oh, my dress feels a little tight right now. Oh, what are people thinking about my bright red rosacea on national? I was like, oh, no. Like, or, oh, is my business going to go out? Right. Because if you try to sell, nothing sells on top of it all. I had to go back to like, why am I doing this? This isn't about me. This is about every woman and person out there that needs to see a new definition of beauty. Like it's not about me. Right. And so it was like that why. And I would imagine for every athlete too, it's like, from their own story to their family to the reason that they want to win, right? It has to be so much bigger than themselves. The fight to make you fight hard enough to not quit when times are hard and to not get in your own head when times are scary, right? And this time was scary, and I was shaking like a leaf, and I barely remember the first minute or two, and then I remember my bright red rosacea on national, because QVC's live to 100 million homes, so. And there's no script, no nothing. It's all live, right? And so you're just live, exactly what you said, staring at a camera, knowing 100 million homes it's broadcast live. And all of a sudden I see on national television, my bright red, bare face, rosacea. And then I just remember and then I went over to the models, right? And it was all real women, every age, shape, size, skin challenge, skin problems, story. And it was like, for me, the most important, meaningful experience, because I was there live on TV, not just calling them beautiful models, but like meaning it. You know what I'm saying? And you cannot fake authenticity and just meaning it. And I'll never forget, we were about a minute left in the cell. And I was like, yes, they haven't cut my time, right? But I had no idea what was going on. And we were about a minute left. And the host is like, the deep shade is almost gone. The tan shade, we're down to 200. I was like, and then all of a sudden, literally with like seconds left, the sold out sign came up across the screen. And I've never done this before. On national TV, tears start streaming down my face. They cut. The producers thought I was going to faint. I found out later, and they came rushing in, but they go on to the next product, which is on another stage, which is probably Dyson vacuum or something. They cut. And I remember Paulo, my husband Paulo, rushing through the double doors of the studio. And I look over at him sobbing, and I'm like, real women have spoken. And I'm like sobbing. And he's like, we're not going bankrupt. Like that's all he cared about. And I was like, I was like sobbing. And Jon, that one airing led to 5 that year, 101 the next year, 150 the year after. And then we did 250 live shows a year on QVC for 8 years in a row. Still do. The company still does. Right now, we built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. And it is right now at this moment. And the only reason I share that isn't to be like, oh, isn't this cool? No, 3 years, they told us no. 3 years, they told us you're not the right fit. Alan Burke says you're not the right fit for us or our customers. And then we built the largest brand in their history, right? And the coolest part about this, and this is why I trust God's timing and everything, is the coolest part about this is Alan Burke, the guy who rejected me, right? He is, after we launched on QVC, he became one of my dearest friends, my and Paula's dearest friends, greatest mentors, biggest champions, all those things, right? And is right now to this day, one of my dearest friends. And then he retired from QVC, and then we hired him in a paid position on our advisory board. And I remember this moment where I realized, oh my gosh, the guy who rejected me is now working for me. I was like, wow, it was like this full circle moment that was huge. And the other thing about it, right? So, and by the way, no one can tell you you're not the right fit. only God can tell you that. No one can tell you you're not the right fit. No one can tell you that, your cheeks are too red, or your body's too big, or you don't come from the right family, or you don't come from the right place, or no one can tell you you're the right fit. And that's why it's so important to turn down the volume on that kind of stuff and to learn how. It's really why I wrote this book, because I feel like so many people, and I've learned this because I get so many DMs on my Instagram all the time with people saying like, I'm about to give up because of this, or I feel stuck because of this. And what I realized is, it's because we turn the volume up, and we, on all those things, on the people who tell us we're not enough, on the business success we see around us at that moment that tells us, we must not be onto something. Maybe our gut's wrong, right? It's like, that's the stuff we listen to. And then we never learn to truly tune in. And the last thing I'll say about the setback setups thing again, is that Alan Burke, even though like he crushed my heart and I sobbed myself to sleep for days in a row when he said, you're not the right fit, all that, I learned later that sometimes in life, we don't know what we don't know. And you're saying that, that rejection is God's protection. In this case, I learned Alan Burke was right when he said no. Like, I just didn't know what I didn't know. Paulo and I, we weren't yet operationally sophisticated enough to handle an account the size of QVC. We would have failed. So had he said yes sooner, we would have failed. And it was like, oh, wow, he was right all along. Again, another example, serendipitous grace. It's just painful rejection at the time. So he was right all along.
Such a great example that here you thought, he was saying you weren't the right fit, but you really weren't ready. And if you would have done it at that point, you wouldn't have succeeded like you did. So the delay was also a blessing. So there's rejection, that's God's protection. There's also delays that we think we're ready now and we're not. I remember when I was speaking when I was younger and I wasn't getting on the big stages. I'm like, why aren't I getting on the big stage? And I was all upset and I wasn't ready for the big stage. If I would have gotten on the big stage, I would have failed miserably. So such a great lesson. But Jamie, how do you get over the frustration? Because a lot of people listening are starting something, or they're not getting the promotion. It's not happening fast enough. They want to create something, but again, they're going through the struggle and the muck and they're not receiving what they want at that time. You knew you had something that was better than the competition. You knew you had a great product, and yet other people weren't recognizing that greatness in the product. And they also weren't recognizing your greatness early on. How did you get over that frustration? Because so many of us deal with that on our journey.
And it's hard, right? I think all the frustration made me strong enough to carry the weight of success when I finally got it. And I think a lot of people think, if I just had my dreams come true right now, all my problems would be solved. But like, you just have new problems. I remember, Jon, like going, oh my gosh. Okay, so many people I think will connect with this out there. I was like, if I could afford to hire anybody, I would have so much help and my life will be so much better. And then I learned, once we could afford to hire people, it's awesome. They're experts and I'm not, and this is great. But now I have a new job of managing everybody, right? And we grew the business to over 1,000 employees. And so, as you grow and grow and grow on your journey, you have different challenges. And I really believe, and this is what I'd say to everyone frustrated right now. And this would have been hard for me to say in the moment, right? These are lessons I've learned. And this is really why I wrote this book, to share them all. To save people nights crying themselves to sleep, at least a few, to save people from making a lot of the mistakes I made, and hopefully take shortcuts, right, to some of the successes they're hoping for, personally and professionally, is really why I wrote the book. But I think that I created an imaginary toolbox in my head, and I would pull from it when I needed to. And I would pull tools. And sometimes they're simple, like a quote from Jay-Z, who says, the genius thing we did was we didn't give up, right? The genius thing we did was we didn't give up. It's like, okay, sometimes it's that simple. I would pull from this imaginary toolbox when I would be frustrated, nothing's going right? And every time I do that, I'd be like, okay. And again, for me, not giving up came down to checking in with my gut and saying, okay, God, I see no proof around me. I see these people I adore, these people that are experts that I am honored to have a meeting with them, right? All these people are telling me I'm not on the right track. And I don't even see proof of sales online, more than 2 to 3 orders. Like there is no proof around me, right? And for me, that's where faith comes in, right? And checking in with your gut. I mean, faith by definition is believing things you don't have proof of, right? Right. So it's like aligning with that trust, that knowing, that gut for me is how you decide, do I keep going? And I think that's really important. And I also think it's perspective. So, when I talk about the toolbox, I would think like, okay, I'm going to choose to believe. I'm going to choose to believe that all of these setbacks around me are just making me stronger to be able one day to carry the weight of my dreams coming true, the weight of the success when it finally happens. It comes, in my opinion, it comes down to mindset, because I think there are probably so many people out there that might have way better products than I created. I probably would never think that. I'm a little biased. I love it. But you know what I'm saying? Or maybe, and there's definitely a million people out there way smarter than me that have created beauty companies. But it's like, what's that differentiator from people that actually make it? I think it comes down to, of course, working really, really hard. Of course, and this is a big one. This one eliminates most people, is not quitting, not giving up every time you get knocked down when your gut says you're on the right track, right? Not quitting. But for me, the single biggest thing I think we did right, and starting with close to nothing, building $1 billion business, is like making the decision to believe that we could. I think that is so important, and learning how to truly just make that decision to believe that you can, because it's really hard. Listen, I have a lot of friends and family I love dearly, like with all my heart. I know they love me, but like, again, like, I don't think any of them understand when the first several years of the business, especially when we had no success, why I felt like it was the right thing for me to be doing, why I gave up my career in television. That was my life dream, to not pay myself for years, eat Costco hot dogs, and just believe it was going to happen. Right. So just learning to really figure out how to do those things, I think for everybody is so important. And let's get really real. I was blessed to start this business with my husband, but for many of my friends and for many other entrepreneurs I know, and many other people I know, sometimes you also have to you have to protect who you turn the volume up on and who you turn the volume down on. And sometimes it's our friends or our family or other people's opinions. Sometimes it's our own partner, right? Sometimes it's our own partner. So this can be a challenge for people to navigate when they have a calling on their heart and they know they want to maybe leave that secure, safe job with great benefits. And listen, this is hard to do. It's hard to do, but I believe when we stay in our comfort zone, because it's very easy to get talked into it. It's what's safe. It's what's often guaranteed. It's what makes everyone around us feel comfy. But when we stay in our comfort zone, I think that it comes at the price of chipping away at our soul. And I think, and why I wrote this book, if people truly learn how to tune into their and trust themselves and believe in themselves and believe they're enough, especially women, right? If we don't do those things, we risk never becoming the person we were born to be. So this book is all about stepping into becoming the person you're born to be and how to do it.
So good, Jamie. Before we close, I have 2 more questions I want to ask you. Yeah. 2 questions that I think are really powerful. One's very spiritual and others very practical. But before that, can you let people know how they can find out about you, about the book? Also, you have a free action plan. Can you talk about the bonuses people get when they get the book?
Well, thank you. I'm so excited. So it's out. It's launch week. I'm so excited for launch week. And so you find out about the book. The book's called Believe It, How to Go From Underestimated to Unstoppable. And if you go to believeit.com, that's the easiest way. By the way, you can buy the book anywhere that it's sold. And if you do pick it up for your community, when you head to believeit.com, you just enter your order number from wherever you bought it from. And for this launch week and maybe a few days after, we'll see what happens. We're giving away we're celebrating. It's really a book launch celebration. And so I created a course, my first ever course, called Becoming Unstoppable, how to overcome the things holding you back. So you get that for free. And then you also get this 20 plus page action plan, which helps you implement all the lessons from the book into your real life. So you get both of those for free on believeit.com. So you just pick it up anywhere it's sold, and then you head there and you get it for free and you just download it. I'm on Instagram at Jamie Kern Lima. That's probably the best. That's the place where I really DM and all those things. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's just an honor. It's a blessing. I'm just grateful to share this time too with you and your whole community and share this book. I'm excited. See, Jon, you've done 927 amazing books and this is my first ever. So it's like this moment where, and by the way, it was probably like maybe 8 years when lit agents would approach me like, can we do your story? Can we do, but they wanted me to have a ghostwriter because I was like doing 100-hour weeks doing the business. And I'm like, you know what? No, I don't want to do a book to make money. I'm not like, if I ever do it one day, I want to write every single word and I want to pour everything I have to give to serve other people into this book. So that's what I did. I waited several years and everything's in here, literally everything. So yeah, I'm honored and blessed to share it with anybody, especially on their journey of learning to believe themselves, trust in themselves, and know they're enough.
I can't wait for people to read it. They're going to be blown away as I was when I read it. It really is that good. It is compelling.
I may or may not have cried when I got your text feedback, by the way. I was like, oh, Jon loves it. Yeah, that's a big deal. Thank you.
Well, because it's true. And I don't say anything that's not true. And it was just that good. And so people are going to be so intrigued and surprised because you're so honest in it. You're so authentic. You're so real. You're someone who's achieved amazing success. And yet you come from very humble beginnings. And so you're able to really share your story, and then they can see themselves in your story. They're going to learn from your lessons, but you share all of yourself and your whole self. And I think that's really powerful because a lot of people don't do that. And then knowing Paulo, I love Paulo, as you know, and knowing him, it was just so cool to read about the backstory about how everything happened. Because I can imagine these two young people building this company together, married, and then the challenges that come with it. And then you've created this amazing success. And then you're now such giving people. You give so much. People need to know that. You won't say it because you're humble, but you're just very giving to people, to causes. You really love helping people. And knowing that, I got to ask you one of my last two questions, just about your faith and how your faith has driven you through all of this. I know you didn't do it alone. You've definitely had a force guiding you your whole life. It's no doubt.
Yeah.
How important was your faith in God on this journey and doing all of this, and also just living your life the way you have lived?
Yeah, I love that you say too, I share it all in the book because it's like 95% stuff I've never shared, including my journey of faith. And for anybody, listening or watching right now, if you've ever struggled with God doubt, right? Like for decades of my life, Jon, I would pray and then I would feel like maybe I'm a fraud because I don't know that I fully believe God exists. And I struggled with it. And, I mean, this was decades. And then when I went to graduate school in New York and I was around a lot of people that had different faiths, no faith, believe only in science. And they believed only in things you could truly see, prove, touch, which of course faith is not required. And the more I was around all of it, it really started me second guessing everything about faith. And I share in this book for the first time what I did and what happened from there, and how I handled that, right? And there was a moment actually where, and I was raised in families that didn't go to therapy or didn't, you just either don't talk about it or you figure it out, right? There's a season I went through where, whole nother story in the book, finding out I was adopted by surprise in my 20s. And there were so many things that happened personally, struggling with fertility, so many things. So anyhow, I was in this season of just, feeling so down for the first time ever. And between not knowing where I came from with my parent, not knowing if God exists, I started seeing a therapist for the first time. And she said one thing to me during one of the sessions that changed my entire faith journey. And I don't even know what she believes, and no clue, by the way. I've never heard her talk about God in any of our sessions. So I said to her one day that I was doubting God exists and that all these things. And she says to me, well, why don't you tell him? I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, if God created the entire universe, what makes you think he can't handle your doubt? Tell him you doubt him and ask him to prove you wrong. Ask him to prove you wrong beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I'm like, okay. And so that started a multi-year thing where like, I mean, let me just keep it really real because I love you, Jon. I'll just keep it like real. I'm just going to pretend your whole community is my friend, just like you are. And I'm just going to say it. I would literally pray and be like, I would pray for, this person's health and this and all those things. And at the end, I'd be like, and I'm doubting you exist. So if you could please prove me wrong, I would be very grateful. Like, prove me wrong, be in a shadow of a doubt. Like, can you show up somehow where I just know? Like, in Jesus' name, amen. Like, those would be my prayers. And this went on for years. And stuff started happening that literally, beyond a shadow of a doubt, was God. In some cases, it was like told to me it was God. Like, and the more years that went on, the more I just grew to know beyond a shadow of a doubt, God's in control, God's time, all of these things, right? I won't share the whole story because so much of it is in the book, but the QVC host that came up to me that day and finally got a shot on QVC. So she retired after we launched, right? The one who discovered me at the expo. Many years later, she was, she had left QVC years before. We grew to be the biggest brand and number one brand. And so I was like, I have to thank her for loving our product that day. So I looked her up, I called her and I said to her, oh my gosh, thank you so much for loving our product. You changed my life. Like, can you believe we're the biggest brand in QVC's history? And she says to me, oh, honey, I do love your product, but that is not why I went up to you that day. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I was walking that expo with thousands and thousands of women. She goes, I clearly heard God tell me to go up to you and help that girl. And she goes, and I just listened. And I'm like, whoa, right? There's so many stories like that have happened. And so and I share so much more in the book, but anyone who's going through that, who believes but doubts, right? For me, telling God I doubt him, asking him to prove me wrong has changed my entire journey of faith. And the last thing I'll say is, like, I talk about my toolbox and all of that. And just for anyone listening or watching right now who struggles with doubt a lot, right? I talk about so many tips in the book, but if you struggle with feeling like you're not qualified, or you doubt yourself, or you get distracted by what other people are doing that looks so good online and they look so successful and this and that, or someone else has launched your product, whatever it is, like, at the end of the day, if you keep checking in with yourself and feeling in your gut, this is your purpose, you're on the right track, this is your mission. One thing in my toolbox, a famous saying that I used to always pull from that really helped me every time I would just try to channel it. And every time I felt not qualified. And the famous saying, just in case someone needs to hear this right now, somebody in your community needs to hear this right now. The famous saying is, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Right. And I would tell myself that over and over and over, because to me, it means if you're on the right track, you feel it, then I think it's part of your purpose and it's part of your calling, part of your mission. And if he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. To me, that means you already have everything you need inside of you right now, right, to accomplish your dreams. It just comes down to believing it for yourself.
Yeah, no one can keep you from what God has planned for you.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, when you were telling me the story about the woman saying that God told her to come talk to you, wow, I got goosebumps like you would not believe. Like, I just had a spiritual experience as you were sharing that, goosebumps, which always happens when God is showing up saying there's something more here. This is bigger. And wow, that was powerful when you said that. Major goosebumps on that moment. So let's go from that to our final question. And I have to ask you, because I want people who are going through a tough time right now to have something practical, like a real practical tip they can take away. They just came off of 2020, which was a horrible year for many, a very challenging year. We're now into 2021. It's February. What are some tips that people can implement to make this a great year, to overcome their struggles, overcome their challenges? Just give them 3 practical little tips and takeaways of what you would recommend they do moving forward. And I think probably believe it should be one, right? But what are the other ones?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even think of that. But yes, Believe It, the book. I didn't even think of that, to be honest. So I would say a couple things. I feel like, if I were to look at 2020, right, it's a year that has been filled with so much uncertainty, more uncertainty in so many ways, tough times with families who might be divided on things. It's been a tough year, people losing their jobs, so many things happening, a year of uncertainty. And so if I look back at the year, I feel like a word that I've heard so many times now is the word pivot, right? So many people are talking about pivoting because they're needing to pivot and they're needing to figure that out, or they're forced to pivot. So one thing I just want to say that I think is so important, because I think in some ways it's a bigger risk to people's dreams or businesses as they go into 2021, as they learn to I need to pivot this way and put more of my business online, or this thing or that thing, or level up my skill set. I think all of those are important. But my worry, and maybe it's more advice, one of the things that we did right, that I think most people don't do right when they're entrepreneurs, and this is my advice for going into 2021 for everybody, is once you truly understand your own mission, your own why, not just your why, but deeper, the why behind the why, and you understand that through line of authenticity through who you are and what you're doing, it is so important that you don't get distracted by the temptation to pivot because everything's uncertain. We're all in this new territory, and it looks like this must be working for someone else, or this must be working for my competitor, or this must be working for whatever. When I look back on, and do not pivot unless it aligns with your mission, because I believe pivoting can be a distraction and a temptation and a short-term thing versus a long-term win. And being exposed to thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs now over a decade in the QVC green room, you meet everybody. The commonality between people who made it, which is 5%, and the people who were there and lasted 1 show, 2 shows, 3 shows, and they're gone, is the ones who were the same off air in the green room. And it didn't matter how they were, crazy, wild, conservative, it didn't matter. The ones who were the same behind the scenes as they were on air, because you can't fake authenticity, and they stayed to their mission, all those things on air, for better or worse. Those are the ones that lasted. And over the years, I would hear from my own teams, my own employees, amazing leaders, even in our company, as we built to 1,000 employees. So many times they would send me stuff that a competitor was doing, or a big trend that was happening in the marketplace. And listen, I think it's important to be aware of all that. But what I would tell them over and over, to the point where they could repeat these words without me there, is I would say our biggest threat to our business and our success isn't the competition. It's not what the competition's doing. It's the risk of us getting distracted by it and getting tempted to have it impact and dilute our own secret sauce and our own authenticity, right? And we kept I would disappoint buyers because they want us to do a big trend so they make more money in their stores. And I would say no. And I don't like to say, I'm a people pleaser growing up, but I learned how to say no because I knew, and disappoint them because I knew if I start doing what's trendy that's not aligned with our mission, just to make short-term money or to react in the moment or hit our numbers for the quarter or whatever it was, that's the start of disintegrating customer trust, brand loyalty, authenticity, all those things. And, I would say right now, I know everyone's really stressed out about how do I pivot? How do I do all these things? Everything's changing. I think it is more important than ever to do the work of getting still, listening, feeling it, going deep down inside of what you're called to do and the mission that you're on, and then making the decision to weed out the temptation to do pivots that aren't aligned with that just because they're working for someone else, or they're a trend, or your friend said, oh my gosh, you got to do that, whatever. It's no, your gut is always more powerful than anyone else's advice. And so that's what I would say is a really big practical thing that's important, no matter if you're an entrepreneur or a creator, or you're someone that just really wants to start a blog, or or you're being forced to pivot. Even if you're forced to pivot and you don't know what you're going to do, right? It's still so critical, because you don't want to miss out on becoming the person you're born to be. And it's still so critical to get that through line of authenticity and listening to your gut and what you're called to do before you make your next decision and your next steps and reacting to all of it.
So good. What a great way to finish, Jamie. That was amazing. Great advice. I'm so excited for the book. I mean, I really am excited for people to read it, for it to get out there, for it to impact people. And I'm just so thankful that you wrote it. I'm thankful for you and Paulo, amazing people who are just, just great friends, great people. And the way that you just overcame so much to accomplish what you accomplished is one of the most, I believe, epic stories of our time. And so I'm honored to know you, and I'm honored to learn from you, and I'm honored to be your friend.
Oh, Jon, I love you. I love Catherine. I'm so honored. I'm grateful. And thanks for the blessing of spending time with your community also, and just sharing this journey together.
So again, book, Unstoppable, right? Program that you have. And then also the free action plan if they order this week.
Yeah. And you just go to believeit.com. So super easy website. The book's called Believe It. So you just go believeit.com and you can get everything for free there. Yeah.
Believeit.com. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jon.